Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cutting straight through the chaos of digital disruption. We're going to look at how to treat your digital strategy just like building a robust, modern skyscraper. Because let's be real, it is not just about randomly downloading the latest software. It's about careful, intentional architecture. If you want to survive and actually thrive in today's business environment, you absolutely need a blueprint.
But before we even think about pouring that foundation, you have to understand one key secret: strategy. It isn't just some static document gathering dust on a desk. The real magic, that interplay between your business goals and new tech, actually starts way before any official plan is written down. It's happening right now, while you're figuring out what your customers need and what the market is secretly demanding. This constant feedback loop means your digital strategy is a living, breathing thing. It's interacting with your tools long before a formal plan is ever officially formulated.
Okay, let's break this down. This model does a fantastic job showing how strategy initiation and emergent technologies interact right from day one. See that triggering event? That could be a sudden shift in how your customers behave or maybe a brand new market risk. That is what sparks the whole thing. But pay attention to that box right in the middle labeled emergent strategy. It's showing us that the different teams in your organization and the tech they use every day are constantly interacting in this messy, bottom-up process. It's that daily, activity-based interplay that eventually bubbles up to meet the deliberate top-down strategy from management. To actually build this out, we're going to unpack 4 foundational elements today. 1. Choose a leader. 2. Attack versus defend. 3. Take a measured approach. And 4. Future-proof. Let's kick things off with part 1. Choose a leader. Look, choosing the exact right person to lead your digital transformation is absolutely paramount. It is arguably the most important part of creating your entire digital strategy. But here's the catch. There is no magic one-size-fits-all answer. The correct choice depends entirely on your specific company culture, how you're structured, and what your current business priorities actually are. You really need someone who naturally clicks with how your company operates day to day. So you essentially have 2 main paths here. You could place this massive responsibility squarely on the CEO's shoulders, making it a top-down mandate from the absolute highest level. Or you can bring in a dedicated chief digital officer, a CDO, whose only job is driving this transformation. But listen, whether it's the CEO or a new CDO, there is one fundamental rule about their authority that you absolutely have to follow. And here's that rule. Your leader's influence must perfectly match the scope of the digital strategy. If you tell someone to overhaul your entire company's tech, but you don't give them the power to override old departmental rules, they're going to fail. Without that power, it'll be incredibly difficult to get the full buy-in from every single department, and you need that buy-in to make effective changes. Simply put, influence has to equal the required impact. Moving right along to our second pillar, attack versus defend. McKinsey & Company dropped a really brilliant insight on this. They say companies should first carefully categorize their potential digital threats and opportunities, and then, this is the key part, deliberately weigh them against their own organizational purpose. It's a massive reality check. You're basically comparing what the wild market is doing against what your company actually exists to do. By doing that comparison, you have to ask yourself a very direct question. Is your company in a position to aggressively go on the offense, seize new territory, and disrupt the market? Or do you need to play defense, hunker down, and protect your core business from being disrupted by somebody else? Being totally honest with that comparison clarifies exactly what should guide your new digital initiatives: a proactive attack stance or a defensive shield. A proactive stance? That means you're out there creating those blue oceans and pushing disruptive tech. A defensive stance, on the other hand, means you're optimizing and upgrading your current operations just to make sure a flashy new digital competitor doesn't steal your loyal customers. All right, number 3, take a measured approach. A truly sound digital strategy often builds in a strict process for assessing if new technology will actually complement or grow the current business. Look, we've all been there. If you're worried your company is falling behind on digital trends, it is so tempting to just panic. And that panic, it makes you want to rush out and buy into some massive new tech project without even looking at how it fits your current strategy. Well, the antidote to that panic is actually pretty simple. Step 1, assess the tech fit. Step 2, align it with your business priorities. And Step 3, execute carefully to avoid wasting resources. By taking a measured, step-by-step approach, you stop yourself from blowing precious capital on initiatives that, frankly, do not align with your business's actual needs. Every single dollar you spend on digital has to serve that larger blueprint. And finally, we arrive at pillar 4, future-proof.
What is the ultimate goal of any digital transformation? It's to create an appropriate, rock-solid foundation for digital business. And what that really means in practice is building an organization that has the built-in capability to continually reinvent itself whenever necessary. You see, you're not just transforming once and calling it a day. You are building the muscle memory to keep up with relentless changes in technology and those ever-shifting customer expectations. To actually pull this off, your digital strategy has to be genuinely visionary. It needs to be robust enough to carry your company safely through all the massive changes of the digital economy. It has to adapt seamlessly to new tools, all while operating in a way that continuously brings a sharp digital edge to your business. We're talking about a sustainable, long-term competitive advantage here. So as you look at your own organization's blueprint today, I want to leave you with this one thought to reflect on. Are you just reacting to the market and simply buying the latest tech off the shelf? Or are you purposefully architecting your long-term digital survival with the right leadership, the right strategic stance, a measured approach, and a vision for continuous reinvention? If you're running or operating a business today, you already know the stakes are incredibly high. The market isn't just changing, it's completely reinventing itself. Organizations are under this overwhelming pressure to modernize, adapt, and basically survive in a completely new world order. Today, we're talking about innovations, disruptive business models, and the absolute necessity of digital transformation. It's really not just a nice-to-have anymore, it is the baseline for survival. So how do we make sense of this massive shift without getting completely overwhelmed? Well, let's take a look. I absolutely love this quote from VYSYA's 2020 analysis. The clarion call of present time is to first learn surfing for revival and survival, and then grow. It perfectly sets up the core metaphor for this explainer. Think of your organization as a surfer, and disruption as this massive, relentless wave. If you just stand there, you're going to drown. But if you can learn to ride it, to actually surf this digital wave, well, that's how you revive, survive, and eventually achieve real, sustainable growth. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, surviving the digital wave. Second, the 4 Ds, 2 Ps, and 1 T. Third, orchestrating the metamorphosis. Fourth, 5 elements of transformation. Fifth, the innovation buzzword. And finally, digitization versus digitalization. Section 1, surviving the digital wave and the threat of drowning. As we establish our baseline here, it is absolutely critical to understand that digital transformation is a continuous journey. It's not a one-time destination. In fact, the source material calls it a task in eternity. Too many organizations view digital transformation as a quick IT project, like you just install a new software system and boom, you're done. But the analysis is explicitly clear. Saving your entity from drowning means implementing digital transformation that constantly adapts to the emerging way of living and operating in the new world order. It's a continuous, ongoing survival mechanism. Section 2, the 4 Ds, 2 Ps, and 1 T, the gear needed for the journey. Now, if we're surfing, we need to know what our surfboard looks like and how to keep our balance, right? According to the analysis, any organization can lay the foundation of its digital transformation on a few key principles. First up, we have McKinsey's 4 Ds: discover, design, deliver, and de-risk. It's a brilliant, concise mnemonic. You discover what the stakeholders actually want, you design the solution, you deliver it, and crucially, you constantly de-risk the process with risk-enabled management. This is essentially the chronological flow of how you approach building out your digital capabilities. But to complete VYSYA's formula, you can't just have the 4 Ds. You need the 2 Ps and the 1 T. That means pairing your core cultural and operational engine, your people and process, with a technological driver, which is your tools. Digital transformation is fundamentally an orchestrated combination of these 3 things. You literally cannot just buy the tools and expect transformation to happen. You have to integrate the people and the processes right alongside them. Section 3, orchestrating the metamorphosis, moving from theory to action. Okay, so how do we actually make this happen across all the different hierarchical levels of an organization? Well, the sources outline specific measures for this orchestration. First, you have to challenge the status quo of your policies and standard operating practices. Next, you train your existing human capital to deal with digital tools, consciously removing that fear of the unknown. And third, this is a massive point, you have to permit mistakes and actually incentivize attempts, regardless of success or failure. You have to give your implementation team a free, supportive environment to experiment with digital technologies without penalizing them. That is how you foster a truly congenial environment for innovating and delivering the best. To do this right, you have to approach this long-drawn task with a very specific mindset. You must embrace the creative destruction of long-standing business policies. Breaking down your old standard operating procedures isn't a loss. It's a necessary clearing of the brush to make way for relatively new, digitally driven practices that are honestly still being defined, adopted, and stabilized. It's an exciting, active process of continuous reinvention.
In practice, this orchestration relies heavily on an activity-based process model. It usually starts with a triggering event, like a new market demand or some kind of crisis. This event forces the organization's subcommunities to engage in technology-mediated practices. They experiment. This creates an emergent strategy, essentially from the bottom up. Eventually, top management aligns these emergent strategies with deliberate strategies to create the final realized strategy. It perfectly encapsulates how digital transformation actually happens on the ground. It's this constant interplay of doing and strategizing.
Section 4. 5 elements of transformation, the core pillars.
Distilling all of these complex narratives down, the sources basically deduce 5 essential elements required for survival and prosperity. 1. Stakeholders' relationship and experience management. 2. Operational agility. 3. Culture and leadership. 4. Workforce enablement, which means training and redeploying those people. And 5. The actual integration of digital technologies. If you want revival and sustainable growth, these are your 5 core pillars. Keep this mental checklist handy as you evaluate your own organization's efforts. Section 5. The innovation buzzword, looking beyond the hype. Now, there is a huge need to step away from the aura of this heavily overused buzzword and look at what it actually means practically. The source defines innovation as conducting exploratory analysis to identify unresolved problems or latent demands of society. Then, applying groundbreaking thoughts to solve those demands in a cost-effective way that creates a win-win for both the customer and the business entity. It's not just about cool new tech, it's about practical problem solving. And, as the text notes, doing this will naturally cause disruptions to existing players in the market. That is the very core of disruptive business models. Section 6. Digitization versus digitalization, the climax of clarity. This brings us to our final and honestly, arguably most crucial distinction in this entire explainer. The diffusion of these two concepts is at the absolute core of the tasks in this era. Let's define the first one clearly. Digitization. Notice the I. This is strictly the conversion step. It's taking analog data from physical documents, operating machinery, legacy systems, and turning it all into digital data and records. The goal here is simply to ensure that the data you are going to use is relevant, from first-hand sources, and completely trustworthy. It is the raw material gathering phase. In practice, this is a highly mechanical process. You start with physical documents, you scan them, edit and prop them, run them through optical character recognition, or OCR, and save them into a digital repository. It's a mechanical process of conversion. It is incredibly important for sure, but it is not the transformation itself. Which leads us to the real aha moment, digitization. Notice the AL. This is where you actually use those digital technologies to change your business, operating, and revenue models. The objective here is to generate more turnover and maximize value creation while minimizing value destruction. A perfect example from the text is adding a virtual e-commerce marketplace to, or entirely replacing, a traditional brick-and-mortar store. Digitization gives you the digital data. Digitalization uses that tech to completely change how you do business. So, as we wrap up this explainer on surfing the digital wave, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Take a hard look at your own organization's current initiatives. Are you just digitizing data, scanning files and installing software? Or are you truly digitalizing your business models to create entirely new value? Remember, the wave is coming. Make sure you're building the right skills to actually surf it.
Look, we hear the phrase digital transformation literally everywhere, right? It's undeniably the buzzword of our era. But today, we are going to cut through all that noise. We're breaking down this massive concept and turning it into a concrete, actionable framework. Because, let's face it, surviving and thriving in today's digitized business environment takes way more than just a surface-level upgrade.
Just to keep us on track, here's our playbook for today. 1. What is digital transformation? 2. Digitization versus digitalization. 3. Real-world examples. 4. The 7 layers of transformation. And 5. Future trends and disruptions. Let's get right into it.
All right, part 1. What is digital transformation? We really have to start by asking ourselves this absolute deal-breaker of a question right out of the gate. Are you truly transforming or just upgrading? Because honestly, True digital transformation is not just, buying some new software and calling it a day. It's a strategic journey. The whole point is to stay ahead of the competition. And to do that, you need a deeply agile mindset. And hey, remember, your tech is only as good as the people actually using it. Real transformation means actively upskilling your workforce and making digital agility a core part of your company's DNA.
Moving on to part 2, digitization versus digitalization.
Okay, we need to clear up some major terminology confusion here, because these two get mixed up constantly. As Antonio Grasso points out, these are two very different foundational tasks. Digitization is just converting your physical, analog data into a digital format, basically scanning a paper document. But digitalization, that is the rocket ship. That means actively leveraging that digitized data and digital technologies to actually improve your business processes and generate revenue. Obviously, you can't digitalize without digitizing first, but if you stop at just scanning your old records, you're missing the entire transformation part.
Let's jump into part 3, real-world transformation examples.
Let's ground this in reality. Picture a traditional manufacturing plant. It's basically a chaotic symphony of analog data. You've got all these isolated counters and flow meters measuring throughput, power, chilled water, steam, plus workmen running around keeping physical logbooks for machine maintenance and spare parts. It's a logistical nightmare, frankly. Without any sort of digital intervention, this is just massive, completely unusable volumes of data gathering dust.
But here's the brilliant solution. By bringing in IoT and APIs, factories can digitize all that analog data. Suddenly, you're not just logging numbers on a clipboard. You're storing data for heavy-hitting, cross-functional analytical studies. Management can instantly spot trends, monitor utility consumption, and make incredibly informed strategic decisions based on actual patterns. And the so what here is huge. It means you're maximizing your value generation while minimizing your value creation costs. It is an absolute game changer.
And speaking of game changers, check out this number. $500 million. That is a $500 million purely in digital revenue brought in during a single month, January 2017, by the New York Times.
So how did they pull that off? Back in 2013, the Times was facing a rapidly shifting media landscape. So they implemented a carefully designed paywall and subscription model for their online content. This digitalization strategy was brilliant because it allowed them to keep delivering the high-quality journalism their readers expected while actually earning sustainable revenue. And wow, did it work. That $500 million was far more than the digital revenues of BuzzFeed, The Guardian, and The Washington Post combined. That right there is the power of a perfectly executed digital strategy.
Which brings us to part 4, the 7 layers of transformation. So, how on earth do we replicate that kind of success? We use the 7-layer framework outlined by Basu. It builds right from the ground up. Layer 1 is data aggregation. You collect and convert analog data into digital form from reliable sources so you can easily retrieve it later. Layer 2 is data management, where you categorize and organize all that information so it's actually ready to be processed. Then we hit Layer 3, workflow automation. This is where you apply algorithms to envision exactly how your business processes should run.
Once you have that vision, we hit Layer 4, the process component, where you actively apply those algorithms and start utilizing the data in your operations. Layer 5 is platform interface integration, basically connecting the shiny new digital system with your old core systems so everything runs smoothly. Layer 6 is end-to-end processing, which is essentially your quality control to ensure an error-free transformation. And finally, Layer 7, front-end software. This is where you integrate everything with the stakeholders' devices, giving them a seamless, technologically collaborative experience.
Now, I want to pause on this quote from Basu because this is absolutely critical. Remember that agile mindset we talked about? You cannot just set up these 7 layers and walk away. You have to revisit these exact points every single time there is a change in your business ecosystem, or at the very least, annually, coinciding right when you formulate your organization's annual business plan. Digital transformation isn't a one-and-done project. It is a continuous, iterative loop.
All right, our final section. Part 5, Future Trends and Disruptions.
To stay competitive, we always have to look at what's coming next on the horizon. Disruptive technologies like big data and cloud computing are already introducing totally new competitive advantages. But what's truly fascinating is how these enabling technologies are driving sustainability. We're seeing a growing intelligence in everyday goods that helps create closed-loop systems for a circular economy. Plus, firms are actively engaging in frugal innovations, which basically means carrying out highly effective, resource-constrained innovations specifically designed for emerging markets. And this brings us to a really interesting structural shift. There is a massive focus right now on shared platforms, or what the literature creatively calls platforms. This model completely blurs the line between a traditional firm and a digital platform. A platform relies heavily on collaborative networks, resource sharing, and the shared intelligence of its entire ecosystem to thrive.
I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up. Knowing that true digital transformation requires an endless commitment to agility, upskilling your workforce, and constantly rethinking your core processes. Is your organization actually prepared to embark upon this journey and stay ahead of the competition? Take these frameworks back to your teams, ask the hard questions, and start building your digital future today. Thanks for hanging out with me